everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guests are the people behind the film Backstabbing for Beginners. It's the story of a young employee at the UN who uncovers a vast conspiracy involving his predecessor, his boss, and Iraqi oil. Let's take a look at the trailer.
My name is Michael Sullivan, and I have a story I think you're going to want to hear.
I knew his father.
He'll do.
The program is called Oil for Food.
The UN would manage the sale of Iraqi oil and use the profits to provide humanitarian relief to alleviate the hardship.
I will do anything I can to help your child.
It sickens me to have to stand there and listen to your lies.
Justin Cutter, Central Intelligence. We think oil for food is being gained for private gain, possibly with help from the inside, which is where you are.
I'm not going to spy for you.
Just keep your eyes and ears open, that's all.
There are some after-service fees. I'm pretty sure they're kickbacks. I took this job because I want to help people.
Come on, kid. You wanted a career in diplomacy while you're missing your golden moment.
Your predecessor, he was murdered. You need to be very, very careful.
You know, it's very dangerous for you to be in this godforsaken desert unescorted. Well, consider this a courtesy.
Get in the car. For as long as I can remember, I've wanted to make a difference.
We've been through this, Michael. This is how it works. Moscow, Beijing, Saddam, hedge funds, mafia, greed.
And whose side are you on?
You and me, kid. We can save the world. Trust me.
Everybody, please welcome Theo James, Pearfly, and Michael Soussan. Guys, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on the film. Michael, I want to start with you. It's your story, right? So what is it like?
Unfortunately, yes.
What is it like to see your story brought to life on the big screen? Obviously, there has to be some editorializing when it comes to making a movie and telling a story in this fashion.
For sure. Life doesn't fit into an hour and a half feature length. But I was quite amazed at the process that Pearfly engaged in here. Because typically, a film like that, you'd come in and you would, in the climax of the movie, find out what the corruption was, and that would, you would then resolve it like that.
Kind of render this story useless to.
Yeah, no. In here, you walk in and you see that it is corrupt right away, and so where do you take it from there? And so it was incredibly close to the reality of the experience of dealing with corruption. Which, a lot of people, having read the book or seen the movie, do get in contact and talk about their own experiences dealing with those kinds of dilemmas. So it was incredible to see the process at work, the artistic process at work. I thought that he put his finger on something very, very, very interesting, which is that nobody really wants to be a whistleblower. Often they're portrayed as kind of big egos who have a lot to say, and because they have detractors and they make enemies.
Well, the detractors are usually the ones who try to portray them that way, right?
Typically.
Yeah.
But who wins the media war, right? I was a journalist before, so I had that help. But the artistic rendition, using drama as a tool of telling this story, was incredible for me to see. I cried in the movie theater when I saw some scenes that were real, that were directly from the experience. But when I sat with Pearfly before, and I also sat with Theo before he went and acted the part, a lot of information was exchanged that was too sensitive for me to give out, even at the time that I wrote my book, because lives were at stake. So in inventing some of the scenes, in order to show the big picture, he actually used material that I was able to give him in confidence. And as for Theo, the funny thing is we had basically a couple of hours to brief, which means that he knew as much about what he was stepping into as I did when I started this job.
Theo, I mean, that's a good point to make because so much of your part is the gateway for the audience. You are, in a lot of ways, you are the audience. You're learning it at the same time as we are, and you are as shocked as we are. What is it like to play a part like that?
Yeah, it's tricky because you want to have the naivety and the learning capacity and be the eyes of the audience, but then also you want to give yourself agency as a character, because characters without agency or without decision-making process or their own kind of moral pendulum aren't that interesting. So you kind of have to toe the line between them.
You find yourself in a scene going, what am I doing here? What's my intention in this scene? It's like, no, your intention is just to sort of take it in.
Yes,
it's tough as an actor.
It is tough, but then you have to be always thinking, how would Michael respond to that, and what because Michael, the real Michael, is a very intelligent man, and the character is intelligent, and you have to be processing the information, but knowing the other questions you're going to ask beyond that. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible, really, because after meeting Michael, finding out that this was a story that actually happened to him was kind of insane. And the level of corruption that was happening at the UN at the time. I mean, and also the period of history, because when in 2002, 2003, I was 17, 16, I didn't know much about it. But in many ways, what happened post for the Gulf War, and then with Oil for Food, and what happened subsequently with Blair and Bush Jr. really shaped Iraq and a lot of the Middle East as it is today. And the deconstruction of Iraq as a nation state also led to a vacuum, which in many ways was the vacuum filled by ISIS. So historically it was very interesting, and then beyond that was really Per's idea about how to tackle this story, which is the idea of the moral questions and the existential questions of truth, and how you answer a question of truth. People think about whistleblowers or in these kind of scenarios as they find corruption, and of course they're going to talk about it and try and expose it. But the reality is much more complex than that, because there are so many factors involved, and often you can be you can be whistleblowing on something small, but is that beneficial for the greater good? And that's the question that Ben Kingsley's character had.
Per, I'm curious, when you go into adapting this film, adapting it based off of Michael's memoirs, and talking about how this is really setting the stage for what happened in the Middle East following, the events that take place in the film, how much do you want to kind of channel that for the audience and sort of give them clues that this is a precursor to where we are now, or do you just try to stick to this story and hope that they pick it up themselves?
Oh, it's almost 2 years since we filmed, so we didn't know that things was going to be so bad at that time. But I want to tell an existential story about when to tell the truth and what is the truth, and when is it good to tell the truth and when shouldn't you tell the truth. And Michael was one of the first whistleblowers. He was before Snowden and these guys. And so that was what I saw in the story. Here's a possibility to tell this story with a young man with a very, very big dilemma. Because he's 24 years old, get into the UN, it is his dream job. And he thinks that he's a clever guy, which he is. And he can see what's good and what's bad and what's black and what's white. And that's not the way things is. It's much more complicated. So my goal was to make a film about the gray area of this, because we are all going into the gray area. It's not like we are good or bad. We are someplace along the line. And the question is, when we stop, when is it too much? And the good thing about this story is that everybody agreed in the end, this was way too much. And there's not many stories like that. There's a lot of stories about corruption, but we don't get all the facts. In this case, we got all the facts, and everybody agreed this is too much. We stepped way over the line.
In many ways, this is kind of a happy ending compared to so many instances of corruption we've seen over the last few years, which it feels like it's exposed, and then we kind of just keep going. We just keep moving on.
In that sense, it's a happy ending, but there's a lot of corruption still, even more than there was at that time still, yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
But we do have now a blueprint, very detailed blueprint for how global corruption works. And that we can apply in the future if we want to, but it's a question of political will, of course.
It's a question of if we want to and if we want to disrupt our economies. Because the only way to attack
Sure.
global corruption is to actually discuss how they affect our economies on the day-to-day.
Well, that's a very good point. Corruption is sometimes efficient.
Inextricably linked right now.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. No, it is. But what's also very important, and you mentioned the word precursor. What we're looking at right now in the world is the greatest refugee crisis since World War II. The entire Muslim world up in flames. The Arab Spring, the thing we call the Arab Spring, started as a revolt against corruption. Corruption influences us here at home. It has an impact on our security, on our institutions. Now this country is in a state of crisis, and again, it's about what is the truth, and are there gradations of truth, or what is society prepared to accept? How many lies are we as a society prepared to accept for convenience's sake? And there is a point beyond which it becomes extremely dangerous. And
are we not at that point yet?
I think this country is at this point right now. I think on a personal level, what Theo took us through in this incredible story that they filmatized was precisely that. He got to a point where he did not want to become a whistleblower. That was true to my experience. I wanted to be a loyal civil servant, loyal to the UN, loyal to my boss. But in the end, something tipped. And as a society, we now have to think about what is it that's going to make us tip.
I feel like I'm on a daily basis. I'm going, is this the tipping? Is this are we tipped? Are we tipped?
It's not stormy. It's not, I don't know.
Yeah. Theo, this is having like a somewhat deep conversation. Maybe this is kind of a shallow question, but it is Ben Kingsley. So what is it like to get the chance to do scenes with Sir Ben Kingsley?
Yeah, petrifying. No, it was actually very easy. Firstly, we were lucky that there was a sequential nature to the shooting, so our relationship mirrored slightly the real relationship in the sense that we were able to shoot some of the beginning scenes when they're meeting, and there's an awkward nature to it. There's a strange power dynamic, and then as we got to know each other in reality and through the film, then we there was a natural kind of bond. But one thing that I enjoyed and was surprised by, because I'm a big fan of Sexy Beast, for example, he has this lovely warmth and a twinkle in his eye, which is very helpful, not only because that's a nice thing to have, but it's a kind of father-son dynamic, and that was very important to have, and he had it in bucket loads. So it's very subtle, but it was great. And there's a scene it
helps because so much of this film is about a father-son dynamic and a son searching for another surrogate father in a lot of ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I remember one of the scenes when Michael goes to confront him at his house. Someone said, "Oh, it feels like a scene from a play," and that was really fun because we had 8 pages of dialogue, and it felt like we were in the midst of kind of really tackling a proper scene. Does that make sense? So it was something to get to grips with.
I always wonder when it comes to actors like Ben Kingsley who've been doing it so long, and I wonder if oftentimes there's a way that they just know they can kind of show up on set, get it done, and it's not necessarily like a laziness or anything. It's that like the director's going to take what they want, and I'll take my direction, we'll go. Or if there's still a great sense of the kind of play a young actor brings to a set, or wanting to play and figure the scene out as much.
Yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised by, the seminal. I find the seminal actors are always pros, and they're always able to find stuff. And yes, they've done it so many times that there's, there are certain things that they do, and there's a certain affability and ease that they do it with. But, the real pros tend to be pros because they're good, but also they still give a shit, you know.
Have a good time.
And they care about the scene, because I think as soon as you stop caring about the scene or what you're trying to achieve in the scene is when things become lazy and dead-eyed and you know, a bit crap. Whereas if you still believe in it and you're able to, you know, find something new, then you know, then it can be good, hopefully.
Yeah. Per, how did you go about recreating Iraq? Where did you guys shoot, and what was it like trying to recreate that scene?
We were supposed to shoot in Jordan, actually, but something happened and it got too dangerous. People, especially Americans, thought it was too dangerous to go to Jordan to film. So right before we started shooting, we had to move all the shoots to Morocco. And I've only been in Marrakesh on holiday, and I wasn't very keen on going to Morocco.
I didn't love Marrakesh.
No, me neither. But listen to this.
Fez. I love Fez. Didn't love Marrakesh.
No, and then and Amman is so beautiful with the white houses, but lesser Baghdad than maybe we ended up with, because then we got to Casablanca, and Casablanca is a very, very tough town. It's an industrial town. I think 4 million people living there, much like Baghdad. So when we got to Casablanca, I could see this is much better. But the tough thing was that we prepared to shoot in Jordan, so we didn't have all the locations. So while we started shooting, we also have to find the locations. And then we shot in 4 countries on 3 continents. We shot in Toronto, we shot in New York, and we shot in Denmark, and we shot in Morocco.
It kind of works that you shot in Casablanca, though, considering the line where he says Iraq was his Casablanca.
It does.
I mean, did you guys you had to have gotten there and been like, all right, this is going to work for us.
No, it was in the script while we thought we were shooting Jordan, but Casablanca really worked for us. It's a really interesting city. Yeah,
it's a fascinating city. I've been there. It's a very working class city. There's very little touristy about it. You kind of show up and you're like, Casablanca, and then you're like, this is kind of boring. It's just a city.
It is really, and the people are tough. This is our city, don't come here. Whereas Marrakesh is the tourists, they want to sell you everything. I really like Casablanca.
Yeah. Let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question out here?
Hi, my question's for Theo. Considering we're living in such a weird time that's just littered with corruption and scandal, was it easy for you to kind of tap into this role, like knowing that, or did it not really affect you at all?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's what the very interesting thing about it is it's 2002, 2003, but how relevant it is to today. So it was very easy to tap into in that sense, but also it was really useful to do the research and learn. You know, I had pieces of the history again because I was 16, 17, but learn about the inception of the UN, how the history of the UN, what it's done really well, what it hasn't been able to do well, and then also the history of the Middle East, so post-colonial, post-Second World War, you know, the British Empire, all that feeds into the reality of this story. But yes, in corruption today, on a slightly different note, is rife, as we all know. But I guess the importance of this story is I think you can take this story and it's very applicable to today, I guess.
Michael, I'm curious, as our resident expert on corruption on this stage, which I don't know if you'd consider yourself that, but for fun, we'll say that. What does it feel like, or is corruption more rife right now, or is it just so much more in our face because the people committing it in power are really bad at hiding it?
You know, that's a really good question. I think in terms of scale, there are ebbs and flows in how much the international community is prepared to accept when it comes to corruption, and often it has to do with how well we're doing at home. But let's look at colonialism. What was corrupt about colonialism? Well, we were there going to other countries, claiming the white man's burden to help. And we enslaved them and stole their resources. So corruption, if we define it as illegal or immoral acts that the powerful do against the powerless, corruption has been a part of our history forever. But the fight for democracy starts and has always started, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, as a fight against corruption. And democracy is the way we guard against too much corruption. There's always going to be some. That's why we have a lot of lawyers. But, you know...
High priests of America, as Tony Kushner.
Yeah, I mean, in Iraq, you pay 10% to get from A to B. Here, you pay 10% to, you know, there's all sorts of gatekeepers in this world. But I think right now in America, since they repealed the Campaign Finance Act, the amount of money from corporations that can legally go to candidates to buy laws is incredible. It also means that, you know, after a catastrophe like the Facebook, the recent Cambridge Analytica scandal, they call in Mr. Zuckerberg, and we see that the actual lawmakers do not know what to ask. Because they haven't even understood how the system works yet. And they themselves, 6 months earlier, passed a law that allowed any online company that wants to sell the information of its users to others. So they're accusing him of doing something or of turning a blind eye to something that they explicitly allowed after some campaign contributions were made to key players. So we have to look at ourselves a little bit here. The problem is not so much and we say this in the film, and I'm very glad it made its way in there, is not so much the lies we tell each other, it's also the lies we tell ourselves. We are accepting a certain amount of political incompetence because our eyes always go to the scandal and the news cycle is, attention deficit and so on. But when do we sit down and actually discuss what laws are being passed and why they're not, or why some laws are not being passed? I'm very glad to see with the Me Too movement and other often minority or women-driven movements in this country that there are some these are the anti-corruption movements. These are the balancers. When people care, ultimately to answer your question, when people care about issues, then there's less misuse and mistrust and less abuse. And if we forget to care, if we think that we can live with it, then there's going to be more until it hurts more of us.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hi, Theo, big fan. I'm really excited to see this movie, but I really wish I was able to make it to London to see your recent play. And since I live here, I'm wondering if you have any aspirations to do Broadway.
Yeah, I would love to in the future, and in fact, I've got a little number that I'm going to do for you all now. It's called Twister, and the three of us are going to play it. No, I would love to, yeah, definitely. I've always wanted to since I first started acting, so, hopefully that'll be on the cards if the right thing comes up.
Guys, congratulations on the film. How can people see Backstabbing for Beginners?
It's out on DirecTV this week, and then it's in theaters next Friday, 26th.
Fantastic. Everybody give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Michael, Theo, and Per, please. Thanks, guys.